Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about 10 things that you should know about INFPs. I am an INFP myself, and I have recently been so interested in the Myers-Briggs types and how you can kind of use that for self-improvement if you know your type. So if you haven't, I definitely recommend taking a Myers-Briggs test if you want to know your personality type, but otherwise I assume you are an INFP if you're watching this, or you want to know more about INFPs. So the first thing I have to say about INFPs, and I just have them list on my phone, is that they are indecisive people. Now, personally, I definitely relate to this. I have the title The Mediator, which kind of tells you that they see both sides of a situation, and that can often be really difficult when making decisions. I recently watched this video, I will link it down below, but I thought it was really funny, honestly. It was about an INFP, and he was saying that he's found that the best way to go about minor decisions is to just choose a random side for him. And I thought this was so funny because that would be so much easier for me, because any little decision I feel like I just get tripped up about. So honestly, it just takes less brain effort for everybody if you just decide something. And I thought that was an interesting perspective. The second thing is that INFPs are overthinkers. Personally, I completely agree with this. Going back to being indecisive, I think this goes hand in hand with that. If you are constantly just weighing things, it's hard to make decisions, and I really read into people. I'm often very skeptical of things, which is positive, I think, in general, but can sometimes be negative. With this, I wanted to say that INFPs are emotional and idealistic, which kind of means they're in their head. I'm going to talk about that later. I completely relate to that. The third thing is that INFPs are abstract thinkers, and like I said, they're very idealistic and kind of make it difficult to function in cookie cutter situations where you have specific tasks and dates and times. I started using a planner because I think that's really necessary, and I would much rather just work in an environment where I can kind of set my own dates and tasks and think creatively. The fourth thing is that INFPs are often misunderstood, and I feel like it's very difficult sometimes to express the things that we're thinking, and we do have a lot of thoughts, but for me personally, it's very, very difficult to actually say what I'm thinking and express myself through social interaction and talking, because we have these intense emotions that I think for the majority of us we want to convey. That can just be a lot of kind of energy that we want to get out. It's difficult to get that out, so it kind of makes maybe outsiders see us as a different person than we want to be perceived or that we are. The fifth thing is that INFPs tend to be very independent, and again, I personally relate. I think, INFPs kind of tend to isolate themselves a little bit, and since they have introverted thinking, it can be hard to work in a group. Also, since they are just introverts, it can be kind of draining. I've been reading this book called The Power of Introverts, Quiet, The Power of Introverts. This is the book. It's by Susan Cain, and it basically talks about how this is kind of an extroverted society, and just in Western culture at least, and how it can be difficult for people who are kind of more reserved because that's just not valued. We see that with like group projects and like class discussions. That's kind of just an example. There is definitely this extroverted ideal. The sixth thing is that INFPs greatly value authenticity, and authenticity is the INFP's main driver. So for decision making, this means what feels right is what we're gonna do. I'm with people and they kind of seem inauthentic. It makes me feel very uncomfortable because I often try to see the truth, if that makes sense. This definitely goes with our value system and how we have a strong value system, and truth is one of those values. So the seventh thing is we are very intuitive. We spend a lot of time alone and we are more independent. We kind of trust ourselves and our intuition, and going hand in hand with authenticity, our kind of gut feeling is what we're going to most likely go for because we are guided by our emotions. Number 8, I already touched on, and that is our value system is very strong. And I read that INFPs are often very interested in spirituality, which I think is interesting. I personally am kind of very interested in finding meaning, and I think a lot of other INFPs are interested in the truth and finding meaning. Also, with the value system, we have a strong sense of good and evil. And like I said, with the indecisiveness, that can be good and bad. That's because, you know, not everything in this world, things in this world are kind of too fast paced, I think, for some people, for some INFPs. And they can't be analyzed all the time. You know, you have to just make snap decisions. Just make snap decisions a lot, and that's very difficult for me and most likely other INFPs. Number 9 is that INFPs are very self-aware. And although they can often be kind of caught up in their head, and I know in social situations this kind of makes them seem out of it or uninterested, perhaps, or just clumsy and disorganized. But I think a lot of kind of analysis of a situation is just going up in their head because of their introverted thinking. I think this kind of self-awareness can be harnessed for self-improvement, but it often leads to self-criticism and self-consciousness. And I think that is one of the reasons that INFPs have a high rate of depression, is because of this constant self-deprecation. I think as far as being self-aware, you need to be aware of the positives of yourself and kind of also be aware of the negatives and maybe work on those things, but not get down about those things and be self-deprecating, and continue promoting and nourishing those good qualities. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is just number 10. It's just socially, how INFPs can differ from other personality types. The first thing is that INFPs are good listeners. I personally pride myself with this, sort of. I feel like I can get tuned out kind of with other thoughts, but for the most part, I feel like I am a good listener. And I think INFPs are definitely people you can confide in because they are good listeners and they will definitely appreciate the truth and possibly a deeper conversation than, I don't know, just everyday like small talk. It may seem like they're removed from a conversation when in fact they're actually just thinking about the conversation. Also, I think socially INFPs tend to be closed off and wanting to have kind of deeper conversations, but not feeling comfortable to just spark up deep conversations with somebody they don't know as well. So kind of having like a few close friends is more common for INFPs than just having a lot of more casual friends. Like I said before, INFPs can often feel kind of alone because I think they are misunderstood. Another thing is that INFPs want to have control over what they do and what they pursue and like I said, with a more creative environment, possibly. And like I said, they're abstract thinkers, so that's a lot easier for them than to have specific dates and times and people telling them what they have to do when. And obviously, this is, that would just be, that's an ideal, but that doesn't happen. And so I think it's important that INFPs kind of try to learn this kind of self-control that I'm very, very slowly learning, because it's just important to have self-control and be able to do things that you don't want to do in some situations. Last thing I want to talk about in social situations that I heard somebody else talking about in another INFP video. I think it was like 20 things to know about INFPs. But that is situational personas. And I feel like I sometimes have this, but it makes me feel inauthentic, and even if I don't realize I'm doing it at all, which is often the case. And this is kind of when you're in different situations, you act differently. So when you're with these people, you act this way, and then when you're with these people, you act this way. And I think the reason I do this sometimes is because I really try to relate and kind of listen to these people and make connections, because I think INFPs want to have connections with people really badly. And that just leads me to kind of acting like them, but I don't even realize it. I'm not like choosing to do that. But that's something I kind of want to work on, just being able to be how you are, and you don't have to worry so much about what other people see you as. That's something I think many INFPs struggle with. So that is 10 things to know about INFPs. If you are an INFP, I hope you could relate. Tell me if you can. And if you are wanting to learn about INFPs, INFPs are some great people. Shout out to all the INFPs out there. And if you have not taken a Myers-Briggs test, I recommend you do so, because you can learn a little bit more about yourself. Okay, have a great day.
The sixth thing is, INFPs are very interested and value authenticity. The sixth thing is that INFPs greatly value